Also heading the news tonight, a project that is expected to open up investments and business opportunities for Singapore firms in major...
Stick around to learn about the visionary mega projects driving this transformation.
Strategy perspective, it is important for Singapore to diversify markets because
the economic links between Singapore and Africa are no longer a quiet conversation. With trade volumes surpassing $20 billion, what we're witnessing now is a dynamic shift, one that's transforming how two of the world's most strategically positioned regions connect, trade, and grow together. But beneath the headlines, what's really driving this high-stakes partnership? A historic beginning rooted in transformation. To truly understand where things are headed, we need to look back at how this relationship began. It wasn't forged through chance or convenience. It was born from bold decisions and visionary leadership during pivotal moments in history. The seeds of this partnership were planted in 1992, just as South Africa began to re-emerge onto the world stage following the long shadow of apartheid. That same year, Singapore's founding father, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, visited South Africa, marking a symbolic gesture of respect and recognition toward a nation on the brink of change. This visit opened the door to formal diplomatic engagement. By May 1992, consular relations were established, and by October 1993, both countries appointed high commissioners, signaling a commitment to long-term partnership. It wasn't just a political exchange, it was the beginning of a relationship founded on mutual aspirations, stability, development, and global influence. The diplomacy didn't stop there. President Nelson Mandela became the first South African head of state to visit Singapore in March 1997, a historic moment followed by visits from President Thabo Mbeki in 2005, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa in 2016, and Deputy President Paul Mashatile in December 2023. These high-level exchanges have built a legacy of trust that now supports a multi-sectoral relationship across business, governance, and multilateral cooperation. The numbers behind the relationship. Let's get into the details that matter. As of 2023, Singapore-based companies have invested over $20 billion in Africa. The merchandise trade between Singapore and Africa has grown at a compounded annual growth rate of 10.6% over the last 5 years. That's not a coincidence, it's strategic. What's even more telling is that the nature of this trade and investment is shifting. It's no longer confined to traditional trading activities. Singaporean companies aren't just buying and selling, they're building. They're investing long-term in ports and logistics, infrastructure, digital finance, and urban planning. Names like Wilmar and Tolaram have become household brands across several African countries. These Singapore-based giants are deeply embedded in the agri-commodities and FMCG sectors. But new players are emerging, and the scope is expanding. Singaporean interest is growing in sectors such as smart cities, urban planning, fintech, carbon markets, and infrastructure. The exact sectors that are shaping Africa's next development phase. Infrastructure, ports, and logistics. Connecting continents. Both Singapore and Africa share one powerful trait: they're gateways to their regions. In Southeast Asia, Singapore's port and airport infrastructure is legendary. In Africa, ports and logistics are crucial for connecting landlocked regions and unlocking trade corridors. That's where the synergy lies. Singaporean firms with deep expertise in port operations and airport management are now engaging directly with African governments and private sector players. They're offering more than services, they're bringing operational excellence, global best practices, and technology integration. And it doesn't end there. Urban planning firms like Surbana Jurong and Meinhardt are helping African cities manage rapid urbanization. With Africa's population growth soaring and city populations exploding, there's urgent demand for sustainable township development, infrastructure planning, and smart mobility solutions. This is where Singapore's own transformation from a developing country to a global city-state offers valuable models. Digital and green economies, the new frontier. While traditional infrastructure remains critical, the real acceleration is happening in the digital and green sectors. Minister of State for Trade and Industry, Alvin Tan, has personally visited several African countries and witnessed firsthand how fintech and e-commerce are reshaping African economies. These sectors aren't just growing, they're exploding, and Singapore is well positioned to help shape their evolution. Singapore's regulatory framework and digital ecosystem are globally respected. By aligning these strengths with Africa's digital rise, the two regions are creating meaningful collaborations, especially in digital trade and financial technology. Meanwhile, Africa's green ambitions are taking center stage, and carbon credit markets are emerging as a key economic lever. Singapore has already signed 2 implementation agreements with Ghana and Rwanda, facilitating the generation and transfer of carbon credits in line with Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. These agreements create frameworks for legitimate, high-quality carbon markets and encourage investment into sustainability-focused projects across Africa. But the deeper value lies in something more permanent: institutional trust. When businesses and governments have stable frameworks, real investment follows. That's exactly what these agreements are designed to unlock. Bridging the knowledge gap. One of the less visible but critical challenges is the knowledge gap. Singaporean companies often lack awareness of African market potential, while African businesses may not fully grasp the strategic benefits of connecting with Southeast Asia through Singapore. And its understandable geographical distance, cultural differences, and differing regulatory environments can make expansion feel daunting. But this is being addressed head-on. Enterprise Singapore has been on the ground since 2013, launching its first African office in Johannesburg, followed by offices in Accra in 2013 and Nairobi in 2018. These centers act as bridges facilitating business matching, offering market insights, and lowering the entry barriers for Singaporean and African firms alike. Initiatives like the Singapore Cooperation Program further build connectivity by offering African officials and policymakers training and capacity building in areas such as economic governance, public administration, and trade diplomacy. These efforts do more than teach skills. They create enduring networks of trust between institutions, which are vital for long-term business success. HighLevel Forums for high-impact conversations. For relationships like this to thrive, there must be platforms for dialogue. 2 critical events coming up this year in Singapore are the Africa-Singapore Business Forum and the Singapore Sub-Saharan Africa High-Level Ministerial Exchange Visit. Both are designed not just to talk, but to deliver. The ASBF is Singapore's premier Africa-focused business platform. It brings together policymakers, CEOs, innovators, and investors under one roof. This year's theme, Bridging Capabilities, Charting Sustainable Growth, reflects the evolving nature of the partnership. From fintech and infrastructure to education and clean energy, the discussions will be cross-sectoral and highly strategic. Over 60 South African business leaders will attend, representing a wide range of industries. This isn't just symbolic, it's tactical. It signals South Africa's intention to scale up economic engagement with Asia, with Singapore as the launchpad. Meanwhile, SAMIV will provide ministers and senior officials from sub-Saharan African nations a direct opportunity to connect with their Singaporean counterparts. These high-level dialogues often lead to bilateral agreements, investment announcements, and shared development frameworks. Building talent, sharing innovation. As trade and investment ties grow stronger, another crucial area of collaboration is unfolding human capital development and innovation exchange. Both Africa and Singapore recognize that the foundation of long-term prosperity lies in skilled people, adaptable institutions, and ecosystems that support innovation from the ground up. Enterprise Singapore has identified entrepreneurship as a powerful lever for inclusive growth. On both sides, startups and SMEs are stepping into the spotlight, solving real problems, building local solutions, and scaling across borders. For African entrepreneurs, Singapore's vibrant startup ecosystem offers more than capital. It provides mentorship, regulatory guidance, and access to venture networks across Asia. In return, African innovators are bringing unique business models, especially in digital finance, e-commerce, and agri-tech sectors, where leapfrogging legacy infrastructure has enabled rapid transformation. These models are not only relevant for African markets, but also for similar contexts across Asia, making the innovation exchange truly two-way. Singapore's capacity-building programs, including the Singapore Cooperation Program, continue to support African officials and entrepreneurs through training in digital economy policy, SME development, and governance. These sessions aren't just academic. They spark real dialogue and networks between changemakers, often resulting in long-term partnerships and follow-on initiatives. As Africa continues to develop its own digital and manufacturing capabilities, the exchange of technical skills and operational know-how becomes even more essential. Singaporean firms entering African markets often rely on local talent, and this demand drives investment in vocational training, digital literacy, and industry-relevant education. These efforts, supported by government partnerships, help align workforce capabilities with evolving market needs. This collaborative mindset, one focused on skills, innovation, and shared learning, is what differentiates the Africa-Singapore relationship. It goes beyond dollars and infrastructure. It's about building ecosystems that empower people on both sides to contribute, lead, and shape the future of their economies. Strengthening public institutions for shared prosperity. As commercial ties deepen and investment flows expand, one question becomes increasingly important: how well are public institutions supporting this growth? A recent report commissioned by the South African presidency, titled "Productivity as a Frontier in the South African Public Service," provides both a sobering reflection and a call to action. The report benchmarks South Africa's public service against high-performing countries like Canada, Singapore, and Rwanda, and the gaps are evident. While South Africa has made strides in setting up policies and legislation that align with global best practices, the real issue lies in execution and enforcement. Implementation shortfalls are undermining productivity across key government functions, from basic service delivery to digital transformation. The report identifies several root causes: a lack of innovation, leadership gaps, poor use of information and communication technologies, and low levels of citizen satisfaction. Challenges like corruption, fragmented interdepartmental coordination, and underinvestment in skills development continue to hold back potential. But here's the nuance: it's not all bad news. Some departments, like basic education, cooperative governance, and social development, regularly meet or even exceed service delivery targets. Others, such as the Department of Home Affairs, are seeing measurable improvements in processing times and accessibility. In fact, South Africa's effective score metric shows that on an output level, parts of the government are hitting their marks. Yet hitting a target isn't the same as leading global benchmarks. As the report points out, complacency in goal setting can mask underperformance. It recommends revisiting these performance metrics to raise ambition and drive true progress. Singapore's public sector, often held up as a global model, demonstrates what effective government can unlock. Between 2007 and 2018, Canada's public service productivity rose 7.2%, driven by strong employee development, automation, and leadership culture. Singapore echoes those strengths, but goes further with seamless digital governance, rapid crisis response mechanisms, and transparent public engagement. For South Africa and other African countries watching closely, this isn't about copying Singapore's model. It's about adapting the principles that work. From agile performance systems and digital citizen services to cross-departmental synergy, there are lessons to be drawn and tailored for context. The governance edge in economic partnerships. Singapore's experience shows that trade corridors and investor interest are not built on market size alone. They require trust in institutions. Investors look for consistent regulation, efficient public services, and clear rules of engagement. In this regard, public sector productivity becomes an economic driver, not just an administrative goal. That's why collaborations like the Africa-Singapore Business Forum are essential, not just for CEOs and business owners, but for policymakers and civil servants. These platforms enable South African officials, for example, to learn from how Singapore's civil service attracts top talent, builds digital-first systems, and maintains public trust. Rwanda is another African standout. It has become a symbol of effective governance on the continent, excelling in justice services, digitized permitting systems, and streamlined investment protocols. In fact, Rwanda often ranks alongside or even ahead of more developed nations in ease of doing business and government effectiveness. South Africa, with its institutional scale and strategic influence, has the chance to blend its democratic tradition with operational excellence, modernizing its public service to support not just internal stability, but also continental economic leadership. This is where Enterprise Singapore's government-to-government collaboration model comes into play. It doesn't just broker business deals, it facilitates knowledge sharing at the bureaucratic level. Public officers exchange insights on how to implement national development plans, drive digital transformation, and build anti-corruption systems that inspire confidence. The message is clear: Africa's economic future depends on getting governance right. Singapore's strategic role in Africa's future. So why does Singapore matter so much to Africa? And why is Africa becoming increasingly central to Singapore's global economic strategy? It's because both regions are connectors. Africa, with the African Continental Free Trade Area, is laying the groundwork for the world's largest free trade zone by population. And Singapore, with its world-class infrastructure, legal transparency, and dense network of free trade agreements, is the ideal platform for African companies looking to tap into the Asian market. African firms like TimeBank, Sasol, and Sonangol have already established their Asian headquarters in Singapore. They benefit from a stable business environment, access to professional services, and a strategic location that offers direct access to over 600 million consumers in Southeast Asia. These success stories serve as a model for others. As Singapore hosts Africa and South Africa prepares for the G20 summit in November 2025, this dual focus shows the rising influence of developing economies in shaping global policy and trade. From diplomacy to development, the relationship isn't confined to markets and policies. It's rooted in shared goals. Both countries were once colonized. Both fought for economic independence and political self-determination. And both now serve as hubs economic, political, and cultural for their respective regions. This shared journey has forged a relationship built on empathy, not just economics. South Africa and Singapore understand each other not just through statistics, but through stories of survival, growth, and ambition. And as climate change, digitalization, and global trade realignments shape the next decade, partnerships like this, grounded in history, driven by innovation, and elevated by trust, will matter more than ever. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. How do you see Africa's rise intersecting with Asia's strategic expansion? Could Singapore and South Africa become the ultimate bridge between continents? If you're in business, policy, or investment, keep your eyes on this space. Because what's happening between Singapore and Africa isn't just a trade story, it's a transformation in real time. And if you found this breakdown useful, hit that like button, share it with someone in trade or policy, and subscribe for more deep dives into global partnerships shaping the future. We've got more insightful content coming your way, don't miss it. Thanks for watching.